Hey everyone, just getting set up here. Just wanting to make sure all the audio levels are good and I'm not blasting eardrums. Carlos, welcome. We are on Twitch as well, and I am on Twitch as well. Twitch is seeming to have some problems right now, so if anyone had any trouble getting to that link, sorry about that. All right. We'll wait just a minute more. I like to wait about 5 minutes. Hey, Addy Ads, welcome. Welcome, Jim Johnson. Am I taking questions? Yes, I'll try to take questions. I'll also try to design, but I'll do my best to try to design and then jump back and look at the chat and see how y'all are doing. Seeing if you have any questions as we go. Definitely want you to learn. It's not all about just building this thing. It's about answering your questions in the moment. So, Xavier, welcome. Not sure if I'm saying your name right. Vipool. Randall, good to have you in. Yes, I love Figma too, Vipool. Definitely super into it. Carlos, anything in the community I want to show off? Well, now that we're here, we may as well, right? So let's go ahead. We'll go ahead and just kind of poke around here, and I'll show you some cool stuff while we're waiting for a few more people to come in. But yeah, this Animal Crossing maker I have not seen, but apparently it is doing quite well on the Figma community. I guess you can make a Animal Crossing character or an avatar, so let's go ahead and check it out. Okay, so I'm just going to duplicate that into my drafts. Very cute. Well, here's the maker. And, oh, I love this. It's set up with links as well, so we can go jump around. Somebody here, whoever made this file, knows what's going on in Figma. They just added links to it. I love that they kept these fun little blobby shapes that you see in Animal Crossing. Looks like you can do all kinds of things here. All right. A face. What are these, all components? Indeed they are. We've got hair. Love it. And tops. Oh, this is fantastic. Yeah, they've definitely, they've done quite a good job in this whole thing. This is great. So there we go. We're sharing that. I'll answer a few questions while we're still waiting just a bit longer. Adiad says, they're trying to create an overlay, cannot seem to make the back layer transparent. Uploaded it to StreamYard, the overlay was completely white and blocked me out. Depends on how you're gonna go about that, Adiads. I'll just hop here into this file here. I don't know, if I was creating something, I might come to this frame here and then, draw some objects on the screen there and say I wanted this to be transparent. I could come right here and just zap this fill. So either hit the minus on it or just do that. Now, of course, I can get the ping out in a couple of ways. One is I can go to export and I can just export frame 1 and that'll be my frame 1 ping. And let's do it. Let's just export it. The other way that I can get that ping out, if I'm in the desktop app, is I can right click, I can go down to copy paste and copy as ping. And as you can see, that is transparent. You can see that there's partially see-through elements. So I hope that helps you. All right. Vipul said, hopes it's not about the auto layout. You've done so much with it. We know it's super cool. It's actually not. But I will give you a little bit of a peek to that, Vipul. I am just trying some personal things to figure out auto layout, or really not figure it out. I know it pretty well, but really what I'm trying to do here is see if I can stretch the limits of it. So I've got this progress bar component here, and then what I'm trying to do is and these are what these tests are all about, can I actually make this progress bar variable width? It's an instance of this component. Can I do that? And I'm just messing around with some different ideas here, like using this auto layout horizontal padding here to be able to do that. And that indeed worked. And then I had some other auto layout tests here that I'm working on. This is all just a fun little file that I'm working on. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and hop in. Looks like everybody's in, or at least a lot of people are, and that's great. So hi everyone, welcome to Build It in Figma. We are continuing, this is our third part in this series, and we're continuing building like a crowd ideated app, and this is all for an idea for On the House, which is basically something pretty simple. It's a cocktail recipe app. I've gathered a bunch of little things that I loved, little aesthetics, little aesthetic notes, things that I thought could inform the aesthetic of the app. At the very beginning, what we did is we actually started working on a little mini design system. And that mini design system was things like bulleted lists. Yes, bullets aren't native in Figma right now, but I actually wanted to do some extra special bulleted lists. And so we built these last time. We built some auto layout based bulleted lists here, and you can see that kind of working here. And you can see how the auto layout actually makes these things grow in size. This is a series of list items. And we set up some basic things. We set up just an image and what would that media object look like. And we set up some basic, and this was way back when, but we set up some basic, this was like 3 weeks ago. We set up some very basic sort of text inputs here. Now you can see that I've started to butcher things a little bit because I started to get curious. So I really would love for you to check out how I set this up today. I decided that I was tired of running around from page to page to page, and I just wanted to bring everything into here. So I've got some photos that are just kind of informing the way that I have been thinking about this app. Like, I kind of want like an old meets new. I love the old-fashioned nature of cocktails, and that they're an art form that's been going for a very long time. And some of the best cocktails, like the old-fashioned, are actually like they've been around forever and the recipe's largely unchanged. And then you've got a lot of really new thinking. We made some keto cocktails over the weekend, and so you've got like a lot of people thinking about cocktails in a new way. You've got some really modern glassware, some really cool stuff happening in this world, and so I really wanted to capture that. I also really love some of the art around Art Deco, and I love some of the stylization around this kind of Art Deco movement. It feels very modern in a lot of ways. And so I wanted to capture some of that. So I just captured some shots that I found on Dribbble. Okay, all that to say, I promised you all what we were going to do is really try to hit the ground running here. And so what I wanted, and I think I kind of figured it out in my head, is I really wanted, because we didn't really have an aesthetic for this thing yet. We really were just starting to set up some things. And so, and I can actually show that with our version history. So if I go to show version history, I can go to, let's go the last time. Let's go to the 20th. You can see on April 20th, this was 7 days ago last week, this is kind of the state of our little design system. Sure, we had the bulleted lists, but we had this sort of like very, very chibi kind of chunky, almost youthful, like really, really rounded corner radiuses. We also had just sort of like, I would say a little bit stale, almost very product designy kind of like choices for text. Nothing really felt stylized and I don't know, like it fit the aesthetic of what we were going to build, but we were just building some building blocks here. We did have some of the style inspiration in place, and we did work on some of the icons. Some of the icons here we thought about like, oh, what would a heart icon be and what would an explore icon be? So we worked on those just a bit. So what I want to take you through though is what I did up until today. So what I started to do is get a little bit of work done on like this aesthetic, like I said, but I want to share with you the first trick that I kind of figured out. And I wanted to create a button. Here, we'll just go to edit current version. Hey, Claire, come on in. Claire, you're going to see some stuff, some work of yours right here on the screen. So this is pretty useful, Co. You can go ahead and drop your link here, but this is their old-fashioned enamel pin, and I really liked the style of it. So we'll probably riff off of that a little bit. All right, so another thing I wanted to do is just kind of keep things bright and fun and maybe a little homage to like the old world feel. So that's why I've got this gradient here. I want to kind of simulate like a shimmering gold metallic kind of a thing. But you can see here that I've got a lot of other very bright poppy colors that I've kind of sampled from some of these images that I really liked, as well as this kind of neutral-ish, almost taupe color, like a little bit of a light tan. So these are going to kind of drive where we're going into the future here. And the way I want to think of it is kind of an old meets new. And this is exactly how I've styled my text. Now, I remember a long time ago, I actually talked to a friend of mine, and we were talking about branding. You may know him. His name is Dan Mall. And he was talking about how we were talking about like a weight loss app. And he was like, what I want to do is I want to pair like a really chunky, thick, like wide typeface, and then I'd like to have like a very thin one, and it's sort of talking about the journey of weight loss and kind of, you know, that there are lots of different bodies within this type, and so we want to represent it. We don't want it to be all thin, skinny. And so I started thinking about that conversation when I was setting up this text. And so I thought, I want something that has like an old world, kind of refined, a little bit old world flair to it. So I chose this text here, and I went ahead and just assigned it. So you can see here we only have a couple of local styles here for our text. We have input text, that's going to be text here that's on the button. We have a heading text, a body text, and a title text. And so what I decided is that any of these two heading or title texts, I want to give it that really cool font. So if you want to know what font that is, we can come here, and it's called Wayfinder CF. It's this kind of elegant, kind of thin, elegant, but very old world feeling text that I really love. I just love it. It is actually relatively new font. Yep, thank you, the Wireframer, for letting us know. Yeah, Twitch is down. I noticed that we're kind of missing some of our audience from there. But instead of doing this, so let's just actually go ahead and assign this to Wayfinder. So let's just go Wayfinder. So I'm gonna assign this body variable to. Let's go change that real quick. I actually want it to be a little bit thinner, not so heavy. If this were a system and we were to go to the app and see what we had already mocked up with this, now these are all set up with styles. So that's why as soon as I updated those styles, you can see that it's all here and it's reflected in the mockups, because all of these bullets and ordered lists are all bound to those styles. Now, I don't like this, and the reason I don't like this is because now this is giving me too much of an old world flair. What I want to have is I want to have this combination of old and new, old and new. So, and I can of course change this from here. I don't have to go back to this design system. I can go back to the body here and just click this, and I can change this. It's kind of a faster way to get there. So I'm going to go to what I had, and I believe it was circular. Now, circular is this like highly modern looking, very geometric typeface. I'm sure everyone has seen it. It's all over the place, right? It's a really, really great typeface. And I thought that this was a really cool combination. This like old and new, kind of hearkening back to that conversation that I had with Dan. So we've got all this, and I'm really liking this. The other thing that I've done is I've taken this mock-up. Originally, it was white. So it just had it like this. And I wanted to start getting that feel of this app. So I went ahead and bound it. So what I did here is I just took this fill, chose from my styles, and you can see it says On the House. This is the name of this app. On the House. Boom. That is not the right color at all. If I hover these, you can see I've actually assigned it to the word background there. Okay, Mira said, is it just you or is the right corner is cutting the menu? Oh, let me see if I can take care of that for you. May have had an issue with my streaming setup. All right, I'm here for y'all. Thank you so much. How are we feeling about all that? Everybody's excited, you're happy. Everybody, you've got some kind of LaCroix. I hope you're ready for this. Great. All right, so here we go. I think I've got that fixed. So I'm starting to really enjoy this. I need to change out this color. Right now it's just black. So I'd like to fix that and change out that color. So I'm going to go back to my design system real quick. And I'm going to figure out what is going to be my body copy and my heading text color, because I haven't figured that out. Now I want this app to feel like what I'm looking at. And when I see here, I see bright vibrance, but I also see warmth. I see a lot of brown tones. I see some of these golden tones, and I like that a lot. I like what I'm seeing there. Now, Now, one thing I don't want to do is I don't want to assign a text color that's like bright pink for everything. Yes, that's bright, but it's going to be a lot of brightness, and I want to reserve those really bright, vibrant colors for my CTAs, for my buttons and links and things like that I'm going to be able to use. Maybe that's for that heart action or whatever I want to do. I want to save those. So I'm going to go ahead, we're going to get away from black. And I had another friend of mine that actually gave me some advice years and years ago. And he said he never designs with just black. I know a lot of designers are doing that right now. But right now what I want to do is, the problem with designing with just black is that you can't get any darker. You've gone to the full end, to the other end of the spectrum. And while that may be a very high contrasting color, I want to just choose something that's a little bit different. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of use this as my sampling board. I'm going to just sample here. Now, this is probably not the smartest way of getting like the best color palette, but I'm going to go ahead and just sample from the things I like. We're just going to kind of play around with this together. One way of sort of darkening this value is that I can actually come into here, and I don't do this very often, but aside from hex, and hex is going to be the base thing that you know, there's a couple ways to darken this color. One way to do that would be you can just literally come in here and hold shift and jog up this value or down this value and darken it or lighten it. Another way about going about it is to go to the HSL. And this is not, I think this is some place that Figma could definitely improve, but you can actually bump up, come to a fill, hue, saturation, and then just bump up or down on these values. And so I can actually get this thing, my lightness is really what I want to focus on. So I've got hue, saturation, lightness, and on lightness, I could just pull that down, but if I liked that brown tone, I could just come into that and just get that darker right there. Maybe a little bit darker. Okay, let's just commit to that. That's going to have some warmth to it. Now, we haven't seen it within everything, but we'll go ahead and add it now. So the way I'm going to add it is I'm just going to come to this here. Doesn't matter where I'm at. I'm just going to go and hit this here to styles and hit create style, and that'll create a style with this selected style. Now I'm going to use the same nomenclature here on the house slash, and I'm just going to call this, I'm going to call this text color. I'm going to be pretty opinionated with that naming. And that means that this and this now would also follow suit with that. I can just change fill to text color there, and we should be all good. Now, I just noticed that I don't think I saved it at all. So let's give that a try again. Let's see, okay, on the house, text color. Let's make sure that I hit create style. Okay. Apparently, it is not working. And I'm wondering if I'm getting it way down here in all of these other colors. Let me go into my file real quick in my assets, and I just want to make sure that I have all these other files that I'm pulling in assets from, and it's really polluting that color thing for me. Like for instance, when I come here and I go to check this out, you can see that there's just so many other ones, and I really don't want those. So I'm going to go to assets. I'm going to go ahead and just turn off all these other projects that I'm working on. We don't need all of these. We don't need any of these side projects. Really, right now we're just working in the local files, so we just want these right here. All right, now we're going to do this one more time, and I'm not sure actually what's happening, but we're going to try to create a style again. I'm try renaming it. Just to text, create the style, and I feel like maybe I'm having actually an error, which is a super fun thing to have on stream. Let's just can that, and let's open it again. I'm going to come back into this file here. Okay, so I absolutely was experiencing an error. You can see here now that I have this 3 times, and that's no good. So I'm going to come here, and I am going to delete the style. And a way that you can delete this is you can actually just right-click it and go to delete on the style. All right, great. Now let's go back to our app here. Hey, welcome in, Alex. Good to have you. And I'm going to just go into these areas here. I'm going to bind those up to that text color, as well as I can go ahead and do this here, but you'll notice that these headings, are just text objects, so I'm going to bind them on those. But these here are actually components. This is what we built last time. So these are component instances. So instead of actually overriding this component instance here, I want it to be changed everywhere. So I'm going to go here, right click it, and go to master component. Now you can see here that this is the master component. I'm going to go ahead and change that. And you'll see that it actually changed all the way down. It may not be very noticeable because it is actually a very dark color, but we're going to do the same thing to the bullet, and we're going to do that there. All right. We're also going to do this here. This is going to be in our ordered list object, and we're also going to do this here. So now this should change all the way down. Let's go back again to the app. Let's see how this is working. Great. Everything's got that nice brown text. Rizkion, absolutely. We will be saving these. We always save these on YouTube and on Twitch. Remember that anybody can have any live Q&A right now. You can ask anything, and if I can get to you, I will. All right, so now we're going to go back, and we're really going to get back into these icons. I want to get my nav bar set up, and I also want to explain to you guys how I made the button. I think the button is so very cool, and I really wanted to inform the feel of this app. I want this thing to feel rich and like it's got an opinion. It's not just a regular rounded radius button. I want it to be something really, really unique and interesting. So this is something that I'm pretty proud of that I built today, and I would love to break it apart for you. But this is a button that expands, and you notice that also the pattern, it's got this double border button that's very like illustrative, and it's got a gradient on it on that border. I thought that was a really cool look that looked really Art Deco-ish. So I'm going to break apart real quick how to make that button. Even if we don't get to the full app, we're not always going to be able to finish everything on this stream, but hopefully we can demonstrate some very cool things for you all. All right, so let's go ahead and break apart this button. Let's detach it from the instance real quick. And I'm just going to open up here, open up the frame, and I'm going to show you there's a little bit of complex stuff going on. We've got a frame here, and we've also got the content of the button here. Now this is not an auto layout button. So for instance, if I go like this, it's not going to change the size of the button. I'm okay with that because right now I'm actually working on a mobile device, and what I'd like this device mockup to have is basically variable width buttons. Sometimes I want it to be a full width and I don't want it to change. This isn't for a desktop app. Most of the time that button I'm going to have be a full width. So let's just start this thing from scratch. I'm going to show you how I built it. Okay. So the first thing we want to do is just to create a frame. So we're going to create a frame for this button. And here's kind of a cool little trick is that I drew a circle here. Now I'm just going to put this on center on the border, and I'm going to move this up into the corner. And this is exactly how I did this. Now normally I think the first way that I would approach this is that I would probably just have created a rectangle, done some vector math here, put these little circles in the corner just like this, and then I would have punched it right out. So I would have taken these two circles, I would have taken all three of these together, and then used this Boolean operator to subtract the selection and done something like that. Now, here's the problem with that, and this is the issue that I ran into. If this button stretches, you'll notice that this corner radius here ends up getting really weird and oblong, and I don't want that look. So let's go back into here, and I'm going to go ahead on this frame. I'm going to go ahead and set the fill to like a light gray, just so I can see where the bounds of this box are. All right. So then the next thing we're going to do here is I'm just going to option drag so that I can duplicate these. And then I'm going to take both of these and option drag them to the far opposite side over here. So far, this doesn't look like much. It's like 4 rings in the corner. And you're probably thinking, Raji, this is stupid looking. To which I reply, no, it's not. Just wait. It's going to be great. All right. So the other thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little chunk of line. That's going to be my next border. And then this one as well. One thing I didn't do is that I made all these 3. So let's go change these real quick. Let's make them all 2 because I want them to match the width of this one as well. I'm going to option drag these out and just rotate it. Kind of just assembling these things one by one. Graham Young is asking, how can I shift nudge a frame and ignore the constraints? Right now I know how to ignore it. So right now you'll see here, let's just say if these two items in here were set to, instead of left top, they were set to scale. You all may have run across this in your design times. You'll notice that once again, we've got this little issue where these things are scaling with it. And I think what Graham's asking is, hey, how can I shift nudge this frame so that it can ignore those constraints? The problem here is that you have to hold command. Right now, the hotkey for this is holding command while you resize a frame. And I'm not sure if you can actually shift nudge, which you can't. I'm holding command at the same time, and you cannot do that, which is kind of a pain. If I have an answer for that, Graham, I'll get back to you. But so far, I don't know of a way. Far Design asks, how to do a transparency mask in an image just like Adobe Illustrator. Let me see if I can get to that in a little bit. I believe I know how to do that. I've done that like 10 times, but hey, we'll get to it when we can. All right, so now we're back at this place. All right, so we're gonna take each one of these, and if you know how constraints work within a frame, you can see here that if I set it to left, and then this top one, I set it to left and top, that means whenever the parent frame resizes, that this object will stay in the upper left side. And then on this one, I'm gonna go ahead and say, wait, whenever this resizes, I want it to stay on the left, but on the bottom. Same thing with this, so on and so forth, right and top, this one, right and bottom. Yeah, you figured it out. Yeah, you're already ahead of me. All right, this line, same kind of a thing, right? Here's the trick. I want this to actually be on the top and bottom. So I want it to be exactly where it is, relatively speaking, top and bottom. This one, left, top and bottom. This line, left and right, I want it to be essentially pinned this way, but I want it to stay on the top. And then on the bottom one here, I want to do left and right, and I want to do bottom. Now, that's a lot of work, but I think this is a great trick for you because think about this. We could do groups and areas. This could be our little panel. In this app, this could potentially be a card design where we have these kind of chamfered edges, these little scalloped edges. But notice we don't get any weird issues with it anymore. We're not having any weird scaling issues. So now that we're doing this, this is kind of the basis of how a frame works and then constraints within that frame. You can imagine there's all kinds of uses for this. Maybe the button always stays at the bottom and you want a button in here to stay at the bottom. Maybe you've got a little meatball element like a notification dot and it's in your button, but you always want it remaining on that upper right corner. All right, so this is the basis of this design here. Now, I'm not gonna break apart exactly how I did all these double ones, but it's basically like this. Essentially, all I did is just bring this thing out here. So I created another copy of this and did this. All right, but let's see how this works in relation to this button. All right, now what we're gonna go ahead and do is we're just gonna rip off that gray color. We don't need it. Yeah, Carlos says he loves constraints. I love them too, so much. Okay. So now what we're gonna do is I wanna wrap this with another frame. Now, it would be like you could just like come over here and like try to draw a frame around this and it'll probably snap. You'll probably get the basic idea here. But notice we already ran into that constraints issue as soon as we did that. One way of doing this here, it's a really cool little technique. Instead of Command G grouping this, you can actually do Command Option G. And actually, let me turn on my keys for you so y'all can see if my little app will work, which it is so not working. Well, I'm not gonna do that. But if I do Command Option G, I can actually frame the actual, I can actually frame the contents of what I have selected. So if you go here and you go to Object, you can see these keys here. So it's Group Selection, Command G, or framing the selection is Command Option G. Now it's a new little fun thing. I love doing it. We love to see it. Command Option G. Notice what'll happen is I'll get a frame around that. And I can even look at the anatomy of that. And now there's a frame within a frame. Another way to do that, if you're, a little bit of a moron like me, where sometimes you group and you're like, I meant to frame. You can just go Command G, group, but then you're like, oh no, I meant to frame. That's fine. You can go ahead and just drop this group up here and you can just change it to a frame. So that's another really great way to undo yourself from design stupidity. Okay, so then you must be asking yourself, like, what the heck is this madness about? I'm asking myself that myself. It's not a good thing. Okay, so we've got this frame around this frame. Now this frame we're going to set up with the same idea. Here's the problem. What happens if I resize the frame? Oh no, it's not following it. That's because by default a frame just does left top constraints. So we'll set it left and right, top and bottom. There's a method to this madness. Okay, that didn't work at all. Left and right, top and bottom. Let's see if this is working. What happened? I guess we did like 18 frames. Okay, we're back. I got rid of that frame. I just ungrouped the frame and it just disappears. Look at Raji. He's doing so great today. Oh my gosh, there it is. All right, it's working. Okay, now you must be asking yourself, why the heck are you doing this? This is stupid, Raji. It could be. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw a rectangle in this, and we're just going to take this rectangle and bring it all the way out to the bounds. Let's do something super duper fun, and let's go a vibrant green color. Let's make sure that it's outside of the frame and that it's within the parentmost frame, but this other frame needs to be below it. Now here's the cool trick. We're going to take this frame 4, hit this mask on it. What this does is it says all the contents of what's inside of this frame or inside of this anything, right? It could be a vector object, it could be anything. We're gonna go ahead and just say, we're using everything in this, just, I don't know what's in there, use it as a mask. Here's what's so cool about that. Now what we've done is we've got this green color shining through because it's masking off this green rectangle. Now we want to make sure that this rectangle is also set up to left and right constraints, top and bottom constraints. Now let's see if we're awesome. And the answer is indeed yes, that we're awesome. Savvy, welcome back in. I'll get back to some questions in just a second. I think I've got FAR design. I need to try to get a question answered for FAR design. So now look what we've done. We're amazing, and we've got this sort of like multi-scalable little asset that we can use for all kinds of things. I'm gonna take this little fella and just put him over here, little fella, and then right here on this button, this is exactly what's happened here. Now I can explain what's happening here, is that this frame here is masking a gradient layer up above it. And so this is how I can get a smooth gradient. So what if I just decided, like, I don't want that gradient. I want all kinds of craziness. Thank you, David, for the hydrate message. That is beautiful of you. You're a beautiful person. Thank you. But what if I had something weirder, like an angular gradient, or I know y'all don't get this crazy, but you can, and that's important to know. So let's just say you've got all these wild and crazy colors in here, and for some reason, I was doing something very silly with it. All right, yeah, let's say it's like that. Look at this crazy look. It works, right? It works with those double borders. And so it's a really cool trick. Took me a little while to figure out today. I knew I could do it because I knew I was awesome, but I just didn't know how long it would take. I also had help of a few friends just kind of showing me some different techniques here. But I think the best technique here is just, yes, I have gone mad. Thank you, Carlos. I think the idea here, though, is that that's a really cool technique that you can use to mask things off. And of course, I just put that whole set of masking and everything under this other object. So I'm not masking off my text. My text still exists on a layer above it. I still have these ideas of little slots to the left and right of the button. I can still auto layout that. It works. It's great. Thank you. All right. So we're going to go back to FAR Design's question. FAR Design said, and I hope you're around still, FAR Design. Didn't mean to ignore you. Just trying to get crazy with this stuff here. How do you do a transparency mask on an image like Illustrator? Now, do not judge me if I completely suck at this, because I've only done this like 2 times, maybe even once. It could be once. All right, so I'm just going to put this down here. And I have this beautiful image of this beautiful drink. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go like this. Boom. And I'm going to go ahead and just choose a gradient on this. So I'm going to come here, go to linear gradients, and I'm going to, let's just try. I don't remember exactly if it's a black to white or black to transparent. Let's just try black to transparent, or just fully opaque to fully transparent. And then I'm just going to, I'm going to go ahead and group these two objects. I guess the gradient is what I want to be the mask. So I'm going to go to the gradient and mask. And it worked. It worked. Okay, so that's exactly how you do it. In this way, we're using gradient to mask off the image. And we're saying here in the gradient, we're saying, hey, all portions that are no transparency, or full transparency, I mean, that is where the image is going to drop off. Or this will work for anything. So you don't have to put an image in there. You can put a hunk of UI in there. You can put anything in there. You can use linear, and I think it's so cool because I think in Illustrator, you actually have to define it to be a different type of mask. Like it has to be an alpha opacity mask as opposed to a shape mask. And so it's cool that it just works. And I believe, notice this here, it's within the mask, you have this option though. If you're like, well, yeah, it has a gradient on it, but I really didn't want to use the gradient. I just wanted to use the shape outlines. And so for instance, what we can do here is say say this thing got crazier, like real crazy. Say I did some weirdness like that, right? Like that's a really funky shape. Say I had the shape, I masked it off and I'm like, oh no, I didn't mean for it to fade out. It just happens to have a linear gradient on it. You can just go ahead and click that use shape outlines and now boom, you're back. Yeah, who is saying that? Good point, David. Nobody's saying that. Nobody's saying that. Vipul says, font previews, are we getting it anytime soon on Figma while selecting the font? I think that's a great question. It's not a question that I can answer. It's a question that I know the team is absolutely been thinking about. But I do have a little bit of a stopgap for you. Right now, if you go to, I think it's called Better Font Picker. Better Font Picker. Haha, there it is. All right, let's install it. This is a decent stopgap, and I know that plugins aren't always the best way to answer issues with the tool, but I will say that we're designing real time, and sometimes, even though Figma's like super fast at like catching up with features and feature requests, they're working on a lot of things, and they're very talented and very awesome, and I get to see that firsthand a lot of times. But I will say that sometimes as a designer, you can't wait 6 months. This stuff is frustrating. So I think what Vipul is asking about is, let's just say in the case of, just take this one here. Let's say in the case of this, I want to go find a font. Well, look at my fonts. Like, how am I supposed to know what it looks like? Like, I don't even get a preview. And what if I'm a super cool designer like I am now, and I have all of these fonts? Like, I have to remember in my head what's going on there. So as you guys can see, yes, I do also download crappy fonts. I am not immune. But the only kind of hints that I have is like, obviously you can just cycle through like this. I know that's not a great answer, but I'm just using the arrow keys to get through those. But the other thing that you can do is go here, go to plugins and go to Better Font Picker. And at least this will help you a little bit with knowing what those fonts look like. Yes, it is a little laggy because it does have to load those fonts in. And until we have a native solution, I think this works pretty well. So of course, say I like this Azo Sans Uber, which I actually really do. I can go ahead and preview it and see it there. So hopefully that's a decent question. But I'm also, Vipul, not saying be patient. I'm saying I've got something to help, at least something. Can you convert? Oh, I'll get back to your question in just a bit. But Pool says, can we mask stuff? I mean, this whole thing could just be a question and answer session. If y'all are learning, give me a thumbs up. If we're just loving this Q&A, I'm happy to just like Q&A the heck out of this. As always, all of my streams are absolutely Q&A. I try to bring it in whenever I can. But if you want more Q&A, keep firing and I'll just keep answering. Give me a little bit of a chat back and let me know if that's what you're loving and you're wanting. Vipul asks, can we mask stuff on text layers without converting it to outline? Oh, you know what? That's very interesting, and it's a really great thing for me to explore because I don't know. I I do know that there is something that I've discovered within Figma that it's not, there are times where it looks like it's converting to outlines that it's actually not. So I just kind of want to test that real quick. All right, we're going to go ahead and mask this off here. So, I mean, here's a mask of a text layer, right? And here's my text, and I can type right into it. So if I pull, I'm not sure, maybe I answered that incorrectly or understood it incorrectly, but I'm masking stuff on a text layer, as you can see with this beautiful star shape that I made with the oh so great star tool, and it's still editable. Everything's like super, super editable, and it's not outlines. So maybe it's your first time doing something like that. There you go. Yeah, you totally can. The other thing that I think is super rad, and I've never really seen a lot of tools that do things like this until the first time that I used Figma. I remember in Illustrator, I used to just get so frustrated because I would be like, okay, here would be the process for like, I want to create this cocktail to be the background of this text, right? And so this would be me. I'm over here, and I would go here, and then I would be like, all right, I need to go to the object. Where's the convert to out? Okay, outline, there it is. Object, outline, stroke. Okay, great. Now I need to make sure that this is a mask, but I need to group. This is seriously how it would work. A group, okay, now I need to move that behind. Okay, now I need to mask it. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's what I used to do. This is not what I do anymore because of what Figma can do. So now, let's just say in this situation with this wayfinder, let's go extra heavy so we can gotta get a little bit more visible regions here. And I'll just turn on this here, auto width. That way it's just automatically to the text. I don't have to keep, undoing line wrap or anything like that. Here's the cool thing. I come to this image, I want this image, I copy it. I select this, I paste. Oh, I actually have to have a fill on the clipboard. It's a little bit different. So with this situation, if I was on Google and I right-clicked an image, I could then come here and paste, and because it's actually a clipboard object, it would actually paste into this text. But in the situation with Figma, when I copy this, it actually knows that I'm copying a Figma object. So when I paste it, it pastes the Figma object itself, another one of these. Here's the trick around that. Just come on over to here. Come over next to this fill. I don't know if y'all know this, but if you select any property, it is selectable. If you come over right next to it here, just right on the edge, you'll see that it goes blue, and it'll get a little highlight color there. If I hit Command C on that, I'm copying just the fill. Now I come over the text, I paste, there it is. It's pretty cool. The other thing, and I didn't know this until recently, is like, once this is a fill, what's happening? How do I adjust? I don't want to just like show this. I want to like change the location of the image. The way this is working is that every object in Figma is pretty much treated as a vector object, most objects at least, and it's in the crop settings. You can see it's cropped here, and as soon as I open this little panel up, I can now see that I can move this image around and change its location, and I can scale it up. Now, here's the other really cool trick and hack. What if I don't want to like always go, okay, go here, go crop, go here. I can just come to any of these objects, both a text and a vector, and hold down Option. And when I double click on this, and I love this because I'm using it all the time, I double click on this, I'm instantly transported over space and time into the crop panel. And so now I can just do this. You'll love this trick because now if I wanted to come into this one and I'm like, oh, I need to fix this, I just come into the object here, the image object. I'm going to Command click just to make sure I'm getting the rootmost, childmost element, and then hold Option and double click, and I should be able to be into the crop panel, which I am. So there's obviously, I'm a little bit far away to be able to like work with these little bitty things, but I can now move this thing around. How you doing? How you doing, Kay? It's good to have you on board. All right. We're just answering Q&As apparently. All right, so now I really want to I've got this beautiful button and I've got to figure out what the heck to do with it, but I really want to start working on some icons that fit. Now, I'm thinking the 3 different areas of this app are going to be, hey, you're welcome, Far Design, you're welcome for that answer. I hope it helped. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to have like a home area, I want to have an explore area, and then I want to just have like a my recipes area. I figured a my recipes area would be super cute if it was just a little martini or a little cocktail or something. So let's just go draw that here. So I'm just going to use these as one of a template. So I'm just going to option drag it on over. And I'm going to turn on my grid here. It is on, as you can see, but my grids must be off. So layout grids is simply Control G to get grids back on. Apparently I just have an 8 pixel grid on a 24 pixel canvas. So this isn't helping me a whole lot. But if I zoom in enough, that pixel grid should come up. If it's not, of course, you can always go here. Make sure your pixel grid is on. Okay, now we can see these little faint lines. Now, pixel grid doesn't always turn on because if it was on at like super zoomed out levels, you would probably certifiably go mad with all of these little bitty grid lines. Excuse me for a moment. It's a hot steamer in here today, apparently. So I want to draw a little martini glass, but I want it to have this like super cool Art Deco-y style. So I'm just going to get out this little vector pen tool like a fool. Or maybe not. I'm going to delete this point. You may have ran into this issue. We're not going to delete that point. We're just going to shift delete it. That way it maintains intact. I really do think this might be a great time for vector networks, but we will see. We will see if it's a great time. Just kind of feeling this icon out. The first one of its kind. But I don't want these icons to look like I just got them off a stock icon site. Damn it. I really want to make sure that I don't know. I want to make sure that these icons look delicious and cool and appropriate. Garima says, how to chill during coronavirus and how to use the most of our design skill to use Figma. If you can teach me, that would be amazing. That would be so cool. I would love that. Please teach us how to chill during coronavirus, because I don't know about you, but I am not chilling. One thing that we can do, sometimes these edges get a little extreme and maybe they're jutting out. Obviously I can just move them in a little bit like this, like one on each side, but I can also just toy with like, what does it look like as an inside or a center or an outside? So I've done that a lot. All right, so now we've got this cute little cocktail glass. Let's move this in just a bit. Now, I do want that Art Deco style. So we're gonna have to really find a way to adopt that. I think we're gonna have to beef this up a bit. So I'm gonna just go to 2 on the stroke. Now we still have a little bit of that issue we were talking about. Also, I don't want the footprint of this icon to be too small, too thin, too narrow. So I'm going to back it up a little bit, and I'm just going to widen the base here. Cool. Now this is a perfect example of why we would want a vector network. Notice that this is separate of this, and every time I gotta move both, or select both and move them together, I can actually just double click, or not double click, just select this, copy it, double click this. Now I'm within this vector editing mode because we have these nodes that have shown up. And I'm just going to paste that inside, so like inside the vector object. But the interesting thing here now is if I take this point, look. It's almost like a little vector. It's almost like a little dancing. God, I wish I could play dance music right now. This would be so perfect. But it's a little dancing cocktail glass. But that's a vector network. That's a very special, unique technology to Figma. And Figma has this ability to have multiple vector points sort of connect to the same node. So it's cool. It's way cool. Now, I can do the same thing with this. Because notice, what if I was like, I'm adjusting my icon and then I'm like, oh, right, now I gotta go here. Right, this is double work that I have to do. And I don't always wanna do all that kind of work. So I'm gonna do the same thing here. I'm gonna cut this object, double click, paste it in. Now when I paste it in, it happened to paste in perfectly on there. So now look, everything's connected, just like us. All right, next I want to go just get a little bit of a reference. I love this here. I want to do a little line level, little water line level, and maybe just a little swizzle stick and an olive. Can I get all that in there? Probably not. Probably not at this icon. I might actually make my icons a little bit bigger on the canvas. I'm just thinking this perfect 45 is very pleasing. So let's get that perfect 45. In fact, if it is all perfectly pleasing, like, let's just draw a perfect 45. I'm just going to draw it instead of with that. I kind of want this to be at a perfect 45. And we can see that it's actually not because of the way that it's following these lines. It's not a perfect 45. I didn't draw it as a perfect 45. I feel bad that it's not a perfect 45. So please do not judge as I explore the perfect 45. Okay, I'm becoming very, very aware right now that this is too chunky. I need it to be either a 1 pixel or I need to make this canvas bigger. That's okay. It's all part of exploration. Let's just keep drawing. I'm just going to bring it back to a 1 pixel because I just I wanna have fun here, and I don't want to get too much lost in all of these like sort of grid details. This is another good time. I could use vector networks. Or I could just move it over here, and I think I'll just do that. I'm feeling that. And I think that's decent. It's a pretty nice looking little cocktail glass right there. And I don't know, what else do we want to do? Maybe it's a fuller cocktail. Make sure we drive home safe. And I do want this olive, but I feel like we're going to be working with such a small canvas. But I feel like that's like a detail that's needed. We gotta have those little details. All right, well, let's see if we can get the olive. Maybe we won't get the little shine mark on the olive, but we'll get the olive. Maybe we can find a way to center this stroke and then to just kind of line that right up with it. So I'm gonna bring this off the canvas just a bit here so I can make sure that I'm snapping to each pixel and that indeed I am getting it on the right 45. Yep, that's what I want right there. I can even go to the half pixel. I just kind of want those two things lining up together. Okay, great. All right. Maybe the olive has to be just a little smaller. We'll see if that holds up. We'll see if that fidelity kind of holds up with the icon system and all this, but I like this. I feel like it feels cool. Now, in the same way, what we could do is create like a mask region for this, because let's just go ahead and try. Let's say, and I love this about Figma, I love that I can actually apply gradients to my strokes. So if I see here strokes, boom, and I put the gradient on it, it works. But this is exactly the way that it works in Illustrator and in a lot of programs, is that each stroke gets its own gradient, and so they're all kind of going crisscross all kinds of different ways, and it's not sort of like a uniform thing. Now, I know a lot of you are probably thinking, hey, I know how to take care of this. Let's just use a sledgehammer to kill this thing. So you're thinking, let's just outline the stroke like this, and then let's just union it all together, and then let's just go ahead and add that on there, which is that's a perfect suggestion. Thank you. Thank you so much for suggesting it. But I don't like doing that because I like keeping things editable. So one thing that I could do is I could make them all become a vector network, just like this cup here. Notice if I just added this to the stroke, boom, here, and added this, it works out perfectly. It's just these things that are not within it. I don't know if I want to deal with the complexities of all that. Getting everything into a part of that vector network may not be suitable for us, but remember the trick that we had before. I'm just going to take these objects and group them. Then I'm going to take a big wash of color, and I'm going to set it to that gradient, and I'm just going to take that group and set it as a mask. Perfect. Now, if I just lock the rectangle, I can go back in here and I can actually move things around, and everything looks really great. This way I can still edit it and preview it in the way that I want to see it. All right, so we've now got our little drinks. This is our recipes. This is where you tap for the drinks. Let's go ahead and name it. We're going to name this home or drinks. We'll just call it drinks. We can even make it a component, if we make it a component, now when we're in the app over here and we've decided to put in our icons here, let's see what we ended up deciding. We said we're going to recreate this nav anyway. We can go ahead and start working on that now. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's start setting up our nav. Now I'm gonna copy that in there. That's what I had on the clipboard, our little cocktail buddy. I'm gonna take this thing here and I'm gonna break it apart and then I'm gonna remake it. So we're gonna go ahead and take each one of these. These should all be components really. They're not right now. You can just see this nav item. Here, let's go ahead and grab this. This nav item is a nice little nav item. Let's keep it. Let's go ahead and just make it a component and let's just call it nav item. But let's change a few things about it. Let's take this label and let's set it to our body text. So let's set it to circular. Now, we'll get to MUI68K just asked a question and I'll go ahead and answer it in just a second. Notice that when I set it to the body style, so it was a style that I had saved, it got really big and I don't want it to be big. So I'm going to go ahead and just detach that style, but that way I still have circular standard, the book, weight, everything like that. But I want to kind of do a little bit of research here. What is this? It's a 10-point text. So I'm going to go ahead and set this same text to 10-point text, and we're going to go ahead and resave this here as on the house / nav text. We don't want it to be blue. I think we're going to go ahead and maybe use the gold. We'll have to do a little bit of testing on those colors to see if those colors are actually very usable against the background. But we'll go ahead right now and just assign it to the gold because we like it. And then this one here is going to have an icon on it. Now, you can see here that this icon, it looks like it's not an instance. It's literally just a graphical object. What I'd like to do is just take this and move this into our design system. If you've ever found out that you're working on something but you're not in your design system, and that's up here, what you can always do is right click this and you can actually go move to page, design system. One thing that I find a little bit frustrating about that is that you don't even always know where it's going to land. So as you can see here, I'm sort of like lost trying to find that thing. Oh, there it is. I believe that's it. Is it it? Nope, that's not it. That's another copy of something. And that's surely not it either. So we're going to go back here. I'm going to undo the things that I did. I'm going to come back to here. I think some of the issue was that I actually had some competing objects with the same name. So we're going to go back to the app. I'm going to move this over to the design system. Now, what I wish and what I hoped it would do is that it would take me right to that object as soon as I moved it, but now I don't know where it's at. Like, this is one weakness that I think we can absolutely work on, is trying to figure out like where this thing is at. I absolutely cannot find it. And if I'm looking in here, in my layers, I know it's there. It's right here, but I can't find it. So let's see if we can do any locating. So what I did is I just found it in here and double clicked it to show me where it went. And indeed it went way the hell off the page. And I think that's something that Figma could absolutely, and I will absolutely tell them that they could work on. All right, so we've got this nav item, and what I want to do is just bring in an icon. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to just paste in this icon right in the spot where that goes. Now I'm going to rename this to just icon because this is a generic nav item. Okay. On these icons, I'm going to go ahead and just remove the background. We don't really need it. It was just there for reference. And in fact, we could also use this drinks icon, which is super great, but I'll go ahead and show you how to swap those out in a second. So we've already got our nav item built, which is great. Let's go back to the app, and we had this whole like nav bar that we're trying to create. So we're going to take this and bring this over here back into the design system. So the next thing that we're going to create in the design system is this one. All right, so this is going to be our nav bar with 3 items in it. I'm going to go ahead and just create that to be a component, and I'm going to call this nav bar. Now I'm going to take a copy of this nav item, and this is you're going to see that we're using we're going to use components in components for this thing. So right here, I'm going to go ahead, you can see this tabs layout here. I'm going to go ahead and just paste this in here. And they've actually created 3 subframes in here. And I'm going to go ahead and just use those things here. I'm going to just drop them in here. And we're going to actually set this up. Oh, we actually made a little bit of a mistake here. Detach that instance. Okay, that's fine. All right, now we're going to go ahead and just use this as a template. But I'm going to set this thing up, hopefully, with auto layout. Let's see if we can pull this off. I've never done this before this way, but we're going to see if we can do it. So I'm going to set this thing to auto layout. Boom. I'm going to make it horizontal. Boom. We're going to get rid of these items because we don't need it here. And then I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate these items in here. And you'll see with auto layout, it automatically spaces them out. Now what I want to do is match this width to this bar. So I'm going to put some space in between the items potentially, and then bring that bar all the way out this way. We'll go ahead and set another background color on this just so we can have a reference. We could also use rulers if we wanted to use rulers. Okay, so this is an example of something kind of working, but not quite. I have not quite been able to master the spacing that they had here. And maybe that's due to internal spacing needs to come out, and then this needs to come in. We're getting a little bit closer. All right, we're gonna go ahead and go with this for now. And then we'll go ahead and adjust it later. But I think what we've done here now is we've been able to have 3 separate components within here. We've created this nav bar component. That's super awesome. Now we can use this component and this item. All right. For the actual nav bar, we don't want label 1, label 2, label 3. And so what we can do here is just do component overrides. So on a component override, what we would probably put here is my drinks or drinks. So I'm going to show my drinks. And then on this one here in the middle, we're going to go ahead and put explore because that's what we were going to do and where we were going to go. And on this one here, we were just going to put account. And if you're all wondering like, well, why would you want the same imagery here? We can also swap out these instances. So see here that we have heart. We can also just go to drinks. Whatever's a related component, it'll pull up here based off of the component naming. So we set up icon slash, and that's how it knew about that. It knew that there was a related component because it's also called icon slash blah, blah, blah. I want to make sure I get to all your questions. You probably can tell exactly where this is going to go, but let me go ahead and answer Mui68K. Can Figma handle strokes and vector lines with multiple width, like with Illustrator and Affinity Designer? Multiple widths. No, the answer is no to that. And I think just to demonstrate, let's say here that you wanted to take this and you wanted to go ahead and add like this, and then you want to add another stroke and another stroke off of it and do that. Right now, Figma doesn't do that. I would love for it to be able to do that, but it's essentially right now, it's a single stroke width per object. The fill, you can have multiple fills per object. You can also have multiple fills on your strokes. So I can actually have a linear gradient that's on top of a black line. And if I wanted that, say to have a blend mode, say it's going to be overlay, I want it to pull from the colors underneath it. I don't want it just to be strictly white to white. And so let me give you a good example of this. Let's just say you're not seeing anything here, I get it. But let's say you wanted to pull from these red tones. You can use an overlay color mode on that, and you can see here is a good example of it's not white to black. It's actually using overlay blend mode on top of that. So you can have multiple stroke fills, and you can also have multiple fills. Here's a little cool hack. You can actually just duplicate these objects right here, and it's just, you can see all of my stroke fills right there. Of course, I can reverse that. Yep, unfortunately, it does not yet support multiple strokes. Mui said, I meant more like a thinner versus more heavy width on a vector line. I hope I explained it better. So I'm not quite exactly sure what you're talking about with regards to that. But on this object here, you can absolutely go super thin or really, really heavy on these things. I don't think I answered that perfectly. I think there's probably something else I could probably do to explain what's going on there. But, oh, I know what you might be talking about. You might be talking about variable stroke width, and that's the idea that along a curve like this, that you might want it to go from one width to another. Meaning on this edge here, yeah, sorry, it took me a second to get that. I blame it on the bubbly, the fake LaCroix. So yeah, the problem with this is that there is no variable stroke width editor. So I can't come in here in Illustrator. What I could do is I could actually take this stroke and sort of make this tapered or sort of blow it up a little bit. I can't do that. It's the same, so it's a mono width line, the same exact width along the course of the line. So nope, I'm not even cropping it up to language confusion anyway. I'm absolutely cropping it up to peach flavored carbonated beverages that have 0 calories in them. All right, Ladislav says, I use the minimal plugin for this. Also helps to locate the moved elements. Awesome, thank you for that suggestion. So let's just see what minimal is, because I'm always very curious about this. He said minimal plugin. I don't see anyone called minimal, but maybe he meant minimap. He absolutely did mean minimap. He said that in the next comment. That is fantastic. It looks like you can do all sorts of things like find your way around large designs. Thank you. That's great. I love that. I will now be using that so I don't get lost on the stream. All right, well, we're coming to the end of the stream today, but I wanted to just make sure that I was able to kind of process any questions you have. I'll likely just sit here and dink around here for a bit, try to get another little icon made and all that. Or probably bring my other icon into that style. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of, don't mind me, I'm just going to be over here getting this cool little Explore icon set up with that masking technique that we had before. We're just going to do this pretty dang simple. Let's set that up as a mask. I'm just going to come on over here and, hey, why not borrow? Hey, it worked. Kind of. I see what happened. I had a fill on this one. Great. Let's go, let's just set it to 1 for now, because that's a single width stroke. Great. All right, Icon Explorer is done for now. We're gonna go ahead and rip the fill out of that. We don't need that. And I'm gonna go ahead and just test it out right here on this instance. So Explorer, let's go ahead and see. Oh, we didn't create a component. Let's come right back here. It's just a frame, so let's just make it a component. Pretty simple. And we're gonna come into this one here, and we're going to just go ahead and move that to Explorer. Now, another way, this is not a great way to do things. If you have a very, very limited design system, just doing this is perfect, right? You can just swap out the instance. But in a lot of situations, maybe you didn't create this icon, and maybe this icon's in a design system. What you might want to do here is just come into this, then in the Assets panel, just search for what you want. So I want to say, oh, there's my icon, that's that Explorer. If I drag over here, notice if I drag and let go, it just sort of like plopped it on the screen. But if I come in and I actually select this slot and I drag it, and then while dragging, I hold Command and Option at the same time, it'll actually swap in place from the Assets panel. And I think that is just delicious. I think that's amazing. It's super cool. I dig it. We'll go ahead and set up this account one. But now that we created all these really cool looking Art Deco-y ones, I sort of hate this account icon. But you know what? For now, we're just going to go ahead and do this. We're going to make it into a component. We're going to rip out any white backgrounds on this stuff, especially on this little alien head that I created. Gotta love a good alien head. My goodness. All right. Same idea here. Mask it off. The cool thing here is I can actually copy the rectangle from this other frame, select this frame, it'll paste right in the same place, and it actually pastes as a locked layer too. So now I don't have to worry about like, oh wait, I still wanted to edit this. It's fine. It's totally fine. One thing I can also do is I can actually come here, select all of these groups, and if all of these this group of all of these sub-objects contains the exact same stroke width. I can actually just put in one there and it'll override to all of them. Now I see a couple weaknesses. Let's move my alien head down or my alien head up. I don't know. I don't know what I want to do. Just leave it at that. Okay, and this one's not called Icon Explorer. This one's actually called Icon Account. Oop, I definitely lost track of where I was. Let's move in here. We're just going to rename this. I just double click the label. You'll notice that over here, the component actually opens up to where I can actually start typing in. All right. I'm just motoring along. Anybody else have any questions? Please keep them coming. This is the portion of the show where I can absolutely change direction and show you some cool things or some not so cool things. I can also turn off my grids here. Ooh, that's looking nice. Now we're gonna whip out this technique here with this button. I'm gonna do something, and I don't want you to judge me for this, but I am thinking we're gonna have a floating nav here, and we're gonna use this button structure. We're gonna use this button structure here. I'm gonna rip out, so I'm just going to detach the whole instance here. And then I'm going to get rid of the content because I don't need this button anymore. I just want the structure of what I created. This frame is exactly what I want. All right. Let's see. Now we can select this group. And like we said before, if they share the same width, we'll be able to edit all these things. But it seems like the stroke widths, maybe I had a weird object in there. The stroke width is different. So I'm going to try 1 on this. But my spacing is a little off for 1. So what I would like to do is create this as part of my navigation here. Let's go ahead really quick and just grab this frame. See what I'm doing here? Grab that frame and come into the app, and I really want to just start testing it out. So I'm going to use a copy of this screen here just to test out what this might look like. And I'm going to put this down at the bottom. And the question here is whether or not we want to have a little floating nav element like that, or we just want a traditional nav bar on the bottom. We'll absolutely test that out and mess with that some more. I do have a few more questions, so I'd love to answer those. Movie68K says, would you use Figma for projects separate from app designs like these? It appears that Figma is winning over Sketch that I currently use. I would absolutely use Figma for projects separate from app designs, totally. In fact, I've been doing this for 3 years. Super Team Deluxe, which is a website of mine where I sell all kinds of like fun little tiny goods. We did almost everything in Figma. We did all of the website designs for superteamdeluxe.com there. We exported all the assets out of that, and it's all just a website. But we also designed a lot of our backer cards for our enamel pins using Figma. We designed little icons that actually get displayed on the actual backer cards, and we did all that in Figma, so I'd absolutely do it. I use Figma for almost anything. I've seen people using Figma for like diagrams for their house electronic layout, like all kinds of things. Ladislav said, do you have any specific naming conventions for your components, layers, and images? Really depends on the project, but absolutely. If you have a larger project or a project where you're having a lot of editors and a lot of authors, I would absolutely organize things into, and a really good example of this would be like this. Let's just say I had, let's go to this design system here. All right, let's just say these are my buttons. In a very simplistic design system, I could easily just name this thing button, right? But there may be other structures that you need to represent here. So what I might actually do is say this is a desktop design system. I would probably put in desktop here under pages, and then under the frame name, I would probably put probably not buttons. I would probably put form inputs or something like that, form elements. And then under this nomenclature here, I would just probably put in button and then probably slash primary or something like that. Now, when you actually navigate the assets panel, what you would see then is desktop, then you would see form inputs, and then you would see button. Now I didn't name these correct, but you would see that it would actually follow the tree structure all the way down. So the way that I did it when I first started using Figma that I did it very wrong in is I would put all of the structure into the name of the file itself or the name of the component itself. So I would put in, you know, desktop, form inputs here, button, and so on and so forth. There's no reason that you need to put all of that way. A really great way to organize those things would be using two different things. It's actually three things. The first thing would be the page name. That's your top level organization. The second thing, and you can also end up going even bigger and using a project, but you've got page name, then you've got frame name, and then you've got component name. And I would probably follow that naming structure in organizing everything so that when you come into the assets panel over here, that things aren't dirty and polluted. A lot of times you'll end up seeing just a ton of different things hodgepodged into here. So I would absolutely recommend doing that. All right, we'll be able to ask a couple last questions I can do for you. Far Design asked, how do you import an icon like an EPS file into Figma? Thanks in advance. I haven't done an EPS in a long time. That's going to be like a print medium, right? I guess sometimes you get an EPS file. Let me see if I can find one on my... Here's an EPS, and I don't think you can actually just drag in EPS files. I would probably find some kind of an EPS to SVG converter. Let's see here if I can actually... All right, let's do this. EPS to SVG converter. Yeah, I would probably do something like this, or use an app that you already have that's able to do this, but then bring in your EPS. Let me see if I can actually find that same exact file and just drag it right in there, this little hammer. All right, cool. I would convert it and then do this. There's probably got to be a batch way of converting these things. But let's go ahead and wait for this. I'm hoping that I can give you a little bit of an idea of another cool thing that you can do. Oh, did this actually, yeah, it's an SVG. All right, let's say for some reason you now see the SVG like this. This is kind of cool. If you inspect element on here, if you ever do this, it's kind of a cool way to like steal a logo from a website. If you come here to the SVG, you can actually just copy the text node of this. Now this is a little bit hackery, but the cool thing is when I actually paste it in, Figma recognizes that it's like, oh wait, I know what you're doing. You are pasting in SVG. So that's any SVG text. So if you literally type in like SVG logo of something, and SVG is a text-based format. And so if you ever to find that text-based format, let me see if I can even find anything like this. Yeah, notice this. This is just a text-based format here. If you were to copy this and paste it in, it would work. SVGs are native in Figma, so if you just drag them right in, they'll just work. So you don't need to do the little trick and the little hack that I just showed you. You can absolutely just download this file. Let me see if I can go ahead and open it here. And I will go ahead and drag that right into Figma. So all I'm doing is just grabbing that from my Finder and dropping it in. Awesome. Selection colors is already enabled, so now I can just start switching up my colors and boom, I'm ready to go. So that's my recommendation. PowerUp says, when he's copying SVG from another program and he's pasting inside into a frame, it always pastes into a frame, and I see that that's happening here. I'm not sure if there's a way to do that, although I would just say, like, if you get more familiar with the shortcuts, and I can just ungroup, now I'm ungrouping in that frame, and I can just ungroup a bunch until I get to the raw object here. And the way that I can tell that is that I can actually come here and just see that it's just sitting in a path. When I double click in it, you can see all these nodes here. I can actually start messing around with these because it's just a vector point. So that's cool. I'm glad I could answer a couple of those questions. I hope I got most of you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for jumping on in. Thank you for checking out some cool little hacks, asking a lot of really great questions. Honestly, great questions. Thanks so much, everyone, for coming in. I'm going to prep more on this file next week. It'll be our last episode next week of this Build It in Figma. I'd like to start building new things with you. So I will prep things in advance and get things working. And I think we'll start working on sort of the base layout of all of the app screens. And then we'll go ahead and start hooking those things up via prototype. So that means if you're going to click this button, how do we go to this area? What's in that area? How do we set up these lists of drinks? And how do we tap on a drink in a list and then go to like a detailed view of that? And what's that transition look like? I'm going to go ahead and prepare those ahead of time for you, because what I really want you to learn on the next episode is that I want you to be able to learn like those prototype things. I think you know enough right now about just laying things out, so I'll take care of that work ahead of time. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming in. We ran a little bit late, so thanks for being patient and hanging on and asking great questions. But thanks so much for staying with me and asking all the great questions. It was really fun. Thanks a lot. Talk to y'all later. You can hit me up on Twitter, whatever. Thanks so much.